everyone, and welcome to the Raptor Queens podcast, the first ever all-woman podcast covering the Toronto Raptors. My name is Sarah Khalil. I am here with my other queens of the North, the OGs, Sonali, Sharma, and Allison Hope. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to all of our listeners. You may be excited to know that this is the 1-year anniversary of our podcast. If you have been with us from the beginning, we want to thank you for your ongoing and continuous support. If you joined us halfway through, we're so glad you're still with us. And if this is your first ever episode listening to us, welcome. We're glad that you're Raptors fans because the Raptors are awesome. And we've got a lot to say. So thanks for being here. Today we're going to cover the Raptors' first week of the 2020-2021 NBA season. We've got our favorite segments, the King of the North and the Joker of the Week, fan favorites. We're going to pick the players that we think have been outstanding this week and those that we think it's either something funny going on or they're just being funny. We've got that. Following that, we will do our regular tea time session. It is hot gossip, maybe some slander. We'll see what we've got to say about the happenings around the league. And then we will turn our attention to the league as a whole and take a look at the teams that we think that have impressed us the most and give our predictions for the upcoming week for the Raptors games. So let's start off by taking a look at the first two Raptors games of the season. The Raptors opened the season against the Pelicans in a 113-99 loss, which was the first loss for the Raptors opening game in 8 years. And then the Raptors followed that up with a second loss against the Spurs, 119-114, which puts the record at a 0-2 record to start this season. In Kyle Lowry's words, I haven't been at this record in a long effing time. We've got to figure it out. So, Allison, let's start with you. What is your take on the first two games of the season?
Yes, not exactly where I thought we would be. The New Orleans game was sort of a tale of two halves, and they were just remarkably flat in the second half, and shots weren't falling. That game was a little bit easier for me to it was a little more acceptable to me. I think New Orleans is low key going to be a good team this year, and not just because of Zion. Like, I'm so impressed with Brandon Ingram. I think they definitely took a step backward with Eric Bledsoe, but I mean, that's for another time. I, I just more focused on the San Antonio game and just, they gave up a lot of straight line drives and unopposed backdoor cuts. And it just showed like a lack of communication. And I think we're really missing our defensive quarterback, who's unfortunately now with the Lakers. Um, the other significant part of that too was our inability on the boards. And I want to say we gave up 14 offensive rebounds, and a lot of those were second, third, fourth chance. I think that really hurt us. I mean, we for the last few years haven't been a strong rebounding team, but that was pretty apparent in that game. And I just remember all summer thinking, I mean, Tristan Thompson would be a terrible culture fit, but that guy is a monster on the boards. Like the San Antonio game, it did show. I mean, we don't have the roster continuity that we've had in years past, and it really showed. I mean, there's going to have to be some practices, and they're going to have to get their communication established. Um, that's kind of what I saw. I mean, there were some things I liked. I don't know if you want to go into that now. I liked Aaron Baines and his willingness to put up the three, especially in that San Antonio game. I could really appreciate how his willingness to do that is going to stretch the floor. And the other thing is just how remarkably bad Norm is. And I'm wondering if there's something going on with his family, or if there's some sort of injury, because he's not this bad. Like, I think something's going on with him. So that's kind of what I saw.
Mm-hmm. Two things really stand out to me about what you said. I'm sure there's a lot more that we can say. One is you said that the New Orleans game second half was kind of flat. I think flat is generally what I would say about the first two games. in terms of the defensive communications, or I don't want to say effort, but it feels like their heart's not in it. And I feel like where you see that the most is with Norm, and that his heart is just not in the game right now. And to your point, maybe it's injury, maybe there's a family related reason. What's standing out to me right now is a defensive play against the New Orleans Pelicans, coming back on the fast break. And he basically just kind of stopped playing defense at the free throw line, just stepped in the path of one of the players that easily stepped around him and went in for the layup. And I was just like, what happened there? It was just this blatant non-effort that I feel like on last year's team, we just never would have seen that kind of non-effort. And so I know that, comparing to last year is actually never really fair to this year's team, because you have to play the team that you're actually on. And I don't know if this team has yet formed their identity, if they really know who they are and what they bring to the court every night. But I will say that I was present to a lot of flatness in the first two games so far. Sonali, what about you? What have you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, like a soda stream that hasn't been carbonated. I agree that it was like quite a flat second half for that New Orleans game. But yeah, the one thing that's sort of been on my mind is, Norman's got to show up, because he was, averaging 15 points a game, and we're seeing barely anything from him right now. And so hopefully this is like, I hope everything's okay with him personally, but you're right, this isn't the Storm and Norm that we're sort of used to. And the one positive, and my favorite, number 25, Chris Boucher, that game against the Spurs, he was fantastic. I think, did he get a triple-double or a double-double in that game? Close, right?
7 blocks.
Yeah. But what an amazing young guy, and like he's really showing himself and like trying to make up for the our loss with Serge and Mark. But yeah, I don't know, I'm still pretty optimistic, because if you look at, I'm sure we'll talk about this in around the league as well too, but like watching all the other games, everybody seems a little sloppy right now. It's just the beginning, and the fact that there hasn't really been much of a break, and we're already like back into regular season again. Like I'm not sure that these guys were even ready to play ball. We're defensively, I think there's no question they've got to figure out how to work, and it'll be interesting to see. And I think I was saying this to Allison before we started, to see sort of what Alex Len and how his sort of his gigantic stature will impact the game as well too in the next games to come. So I'm looking more forward rather than looking at the past right now.
Speaking of looking forward, but also looking at the past two games, because maybe they have some bearing on how this is going to go, what did you guys think about Pascal Siakam's game and bouncing back from the bubble? Allison, you go first.
Well, I'm not overly impressed, and without revealing too much, I'll probably touch on some of this in a subsequent segment here. He sort of failed to assert himself in the game at key points, particularly in that San Antonio game in the fourth quarter. That game was definitely there for the taking. San Antonio largely has had no roster change from last year. For the most part, and they didn't even make the playoffs last year. He should have been able to assert himself in that game, and he didn't do it. So I think he definitely looks more comfortable than he looked in the bubble. And this is part of the development process. I understand that. But as the season goes on, I think we need to see more from him.
Okay. Sonali?
Yeah, I agree. He's looking a lot better than he was looking at in Disney World, but we need to see all-star Pascal. So
Sarah, what do you think?
Well, okay, just quick yes or no. Are you worried?
No.
Yes.
Allison says no. Sonali says yes. Okay.
I'm generally just worried. I think my disposition, like having had COVID, I'm just worried about everything all the time.
Okay, well, fair enough. Let's just break it down then, just about Pascal. I'm going to go with a little too early to be worried as well. I did see some, I'm going to say, signs of life or signs of what I like to see early in the New Orleans game. Really, really aggressive and playing with, in his own words, playing with juice, which was good. And I guess just maybe looking to sustain that. I guess part of me is worried, but you know what? I don't actually know. I feel like this worry just might be like a part of a bigger picture concern that the top 4 teams in the East this year probably don't include the Raptors, and those teams all got better, and the Raptors I don't think did, not obviously, and in fact losing Mark and Serge probably would. I don't want to say it, but I don't think they got better. I think maybe they got worse. And that's a pretty pessimistic point of view for me, actually. I am looking forward to watching Chris Boucher develop. I think he's going to become an outstanding player. I just think the caliber of Mark and Serge can't be overstated. What they do, what Mark did defensively, and what Serge provided defensively and offensively, I don't think it's replaceable. And so, given that you can't make a direct replacement, if I'm Nick Nurse, what I am now curious about is what do I do with this particular group of players? How do I make this particular group of players flourish? And this is where I kind of hope he brings and draws upon his own musical experience, thinking of this team like if he was composing and his team were the available notes, what kind of song would he write? And that to me is what I would be looking at if I was Nick. This team, as they are, how could I elicit the best in them, and how could I structure my defense and offense in a way that would really allow them to flourish? Allison, what are your thoughts about that? What would you be focused on right now if you were Nick?
I think, given the communication issues that I saw, and just, I mean, at one point there was just a straight line drive down the middle, and OG made like no attempt to contest the shot that was against San Antonio. I mean, I think they need to work on like practice, like basic, sounding like Allen Iverson, basic practices just to establish whose responsibility, the coverages. But as far as personnel, that becomes a little bit more intangible. That's where, I mean, I'm not like leadership material as far as identifying who's good at what. That's out of my wheelhouse completely. And I mean, that's where a coaching genius comes in. So I'm not really clear. Like I don't have a good answer to that, Sarah.
Well, I don't think you're wrong about the communication. Apparently, that's something Fred noticed too. And actually, he was quoted as saying, there's been a lack of communication. It's really quiet out there. And, it's not like there's a lot of fans and you can't hear each other. We're just not talking to one another. So I'm sure that, Nick Nurse is going to focus on more than one thing. And one of the things that he focuses on will be communication. Sonali, what do you think?
I mean, I completely agree with both of you. I think defense is like probably the big, like generally broad strokes, like defense needs to be the number one priority. But, going back to the point about Norman, like we don't know what's going on with him. But if I was Nick, I would be focusing on Norman as well too, because offensively, if we're going to bring in points, Norman has to be performing at his maximum. But it just kind of reminds me of like when you go to school and like the first week, everybody, you meet your friends and you're kind of figuring out who's the class clown, who's going to be the leader, who's going to be like, there's all these roles. So I think everyone is sort of like you a bit, Sarah. I'm not too worried, but I think as the season goes on, the roles will sort of be defined. And last year just felt like it was the longest shortest season ever, right? So we're sort of, and yes, we're not gonna, the loss of Serge and Mark it's very real. So yeah, Nick has a lot of composing to do.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's going to earn his money this year. Okay, let's move sideways just for a second here. I know this is probably old news for the league generally, but we haven't covered it yet on our podcast. So as we know, Giannis signed with the Milwaukee Bucks. He's no longer a free agent next season, and the Raptors front office has been constructing the roster and their and player salaries on purpose to be able to make the biggest offer they can to Giannis next season for free agency. Basically, they were kind of placing all their eggs in one basket for having Giannis sign next year. That's no longer in the cards. And what do you guys think? Do you think that the front office made a mistake playing it the way that they did? Or maybe another way of saying this is, because I don't think it was a mistake. I think everyone knew what they were doing, and the organization was behind them, that this was the direction we were going to go. But is there anything that perhaps you would have liked to see done differently now, knowing how it turned out, which is obviously hindsight 2020? It's a weird question, but I hope you get the gist or the heart of what I'm talking about. Allison, you go ahead.
In retrospect, it would certainly have been nice to keep Serge. He had a career year last year. He was a really good Raptor. He was good for the team. He was good for the country. He was good for the city. I'm really going to miss him. So, I mean, I guess in retrospect, and as much as Mark brought and helped us bring a championship, I'm not really sorry that we didn't resign him. I think his last game with the Lakers was good, but I wouldn't describe Lakers Nation as a patient fan base, and he got pretty much skewered after the first game. So that's kind of how I see it. I wish we'd kept Serge. But I mean, the thing that Masai did, even though, what happened with Giannis, we have flexibility. So, and I don't think that could be understated. And when you look at a team like the Utah Jazz and signing Rudy Gobert to that monstrous contract, on top of the money that they rightfully paid to Jamal Murray, sorry, to Donovan Mitchell, sorry, they are hamstrung. They have no flexibility. So, we have that. So, and it's hard to know what the future holds, right? Like when we kind of talked about this question, um, who knew 2 years ago that Kawhi Leonard would be available? And you just think, okay, so what if the wheels fall off in Brooklyn and, Kyrie does a Kyrie and KD wants out, right? Or what if Jamal Murray wants to come home? Or what if Trae Young gets sick of leadership in Atlanta? I mean, we have flexibility to look at scenarios like that. So I'm not a believer that everything happens for a reason. I think a lot of stuff is random, but I think Masai has positioned us well.
Excellent take. I think sorry, go ahead, Sonali.
No, I said that was like beautifully composed, Allison. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think, yeah, we have a lot of flexibility, and who knows what the future holds, right? I think I'm sure the Clippers thought they were going to win a championship last year, and that didn't happen for them. So it's yeah, I think we're in a much better position. But I agree with you that like I miss Serge a lot, not just from a basketball point of view, but also for how he put Canada on the map in terms of basketball and his ambassadorial take on everything. So
yeah, I'm gonna say that I don't think there was any mistakes specifically around holding cap space for Giannis, but I think that somehow there was a misplay with Serge. I don't understand how he didn't come back. stating that he wanted to, the way he loved the city, and that there was there really no way to structure his contract that he could have been here this year. That to me is the one I guess error that I would say. I'm like, this seems like an error. How did that happen? So eventually I'll get over it.
Totally. And now he's beating up his own team players. I mean, he just got Kawhi 8 stitches.
That's true. Yeah. If you don't know, Serge elbowed Kawhi in the face, and then Kawhi needed 8 stitches. We'll get to some Clippers slander later, but yeah. To your point, Allison. I mean, I think one of the beautiful things about basketball, and that this is really more of a mindset thing, and Nick is able to do it, Masai is able to do it, because you've seen it in the past, that they can be in the moment and see the opportunity that presents itself in that moment, versus narratives about how things are, how they were, and because of that, they're actually able to make some really interesting decisions at the time that the decisions are ready to be made. So we'll see how that plays out. Okay, so that completes our Raptors Roundup segment. We're going to move into now to one of our favorite segments, the King of the North. Who stood out to you this week on the Raptors team? Sonali, you go first. Who's your King of the North?
I think I already I hinted towards this, but Chris Boucher was my King of the North for obvious reasons. He had that game with the Spurs was phenomenal for this young man, and I'm just really excited to see him back out on the court and to see how he's going to grow in this next upcoming season. Mm-hmm.
Excellent choice. Allison, what about you?
I certainly looked at Chris Boucher, but in the interest of avoiding unanimity, I went with Kyle Lowry, unsurprisingly. I mean, this guy looks like he's found the fountain of youth. So he was great. He's got range. He's, dynamic. Yeah, Kyle Lowry.
Well, those are the two players that I flip-flop back and forth. A game against New Orleans, Allison, I just texted my dad, Kyle Lowry is an effing superstar. I love that guy. Ultimately, I landed on Chris Boucher. He just was absolutely standout, fantastic in the game against the Spurs. 7 blocks. It was not an easy thing to do. 7 blocks, a double-double. And just energy when there was flatness, and he brought lots of energy. The other person I kind of looked at was Fred VanVleet, because he is still bringing it on defense. That guy's hands are strong, they're quick, he's in the right position, and I think he's leading the way defensively for the team. So that was another person I looked at. Okay, moving on to the next segment, our Joker of the Week, who either did something funny and made you laugh, or is just kind of not performing that well. And so we're going to give him the honorary title of Joker of the Week. Allison, you go first this time.
So for me, it was kind of a tie between Pascal and Norm. And again, I'm not pulling the parachute on Pascal. I'm not panicking, but just, he's not really in a position of leadership right now. He's not making clutch shots. He's failing to impose his will, like at critical points in, especially in the fourth quarter against San Antonio. And just Norm, I feel badly. I think something's got to be up with him. So those were kind of my two choices.
Okay, and if you had to pick one, who would you land on?
Pascal.
Ah, okay.
Because I legit think something's going on with Norm, because this is not him.
Got it. All right. Sonali, who would you choose?
Oh no, then I feel bad because now we've made this assumption that something really bad is going on with Norman, but Norman was my choice, so I'm just gonna stick with Norm.
Fair enough. I'm also gonna go with Norm, and while I can completely have compassion and sympathy if there is something going on, there's just purely looking at performance on court. All right, ladies, that's some excellent choices. Now let's move into our tea time. And I'm just going to lead us into tea time by telling you about some of yesterday's scores because they were a little bit, well, odd. So the Knicks beat the Bucks by 20 points, 130 to 110. That was a surprise. The Cavaliers beat the Sixers by 24 points, 118 to 94. And the Mavericks beat the Clippers 124 to 73, i.e. 51 points. And the Clippers were terrible. We're absolutely terrible. All right, Clipper slander, let's go. Who wants to start?
It's not a big deal, Sarah. 51 points is not a big deal, according to Paul George.
Like, how dare he? Like, for all of those of us who go out and bust our tails on our jobs and give, I hate to use a sports cliche, 110%, and show up every day with a smile while the manager's like blathering on about some stupid thing. This guy can't even, show up and do his job. It's insulting. As a fan, it's insulting.
Tell us how you really feel, Allison.
Yeah.
Like,
Just
honestly.
get it out.
I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think he's lost the respect of his locker room? Do you think anyone respects him?
No.
No.
And apparently there was like eye rolling at one point. I mean, and I was unclear whether that was post the elimination after being up 3-1, or if that was after the latest comments about this isn't a big deal. I mean, yeah, I think there's no respect for him. And apparently, because I've treated myself to a subscription of The Athletic, there was an article about how sources in the locker room said that a lot of the players sort of let things go with Kawhi, the preferential treatment, because he had actually accomplished things in his life, whereas they were much less willing to let privilege as far as Paul George go, because he really hadn't accomplished anything. So yeah, I think he's probably lost the room there.
And like, not just because he hasn't accomplished things, like it's because he says stupid things, right? Like that's why. Everything that comes out of his mouth, I just think, like, he just is so cringeworthy all the time.
And I shouldn't say he hasn't accomplished anything. I mean, he has been an all-star several times. And he's got a big contract. So, I mean, I guess he's accomplished some things. But I mean, as far as, going deep or, yeah. And he's just, I think, oblivious too.
I
Like,
think that's it.
to your point there, like, just like, obviously not self-aware.
I think that's probably the biggest thing is when you say things like, "Oh, it's not a big deal," or just it's like he doesn't have a grasp on that things actually aren't working, and so he glosses over them and pretends things are working, and then that's the problem. You just tune someone out when they aren't present to an actual problem and just keep acting as if there isn't one.
But I mean, I think maybe too, I mean, when you're dating the coach's daughter and then you cheat on her with a stripper, perhaps that is a manifestation of poor judgment as well. I don't know, but I'm just, theorizing.
Yeah, I mean, these are all very valid points. Yeah, the guy just like he's way out in left field in terms of either he has like a really severe case of narcissism, or, and this is like me putting on I am not a psychologist, but I'm putting on that hat right now. But yeah, he's so out in left field in terms of like he's made himself a meme, and Twitter is just loving everything that Paul George is doing. And when you pass the ball to like the ghost of Christmas on opening night and you're playing against the Lakers, yeah, it's yeah, he's a clown. He's a clown. And I feel bad for Kawhi that like Kawhi chose a clown.
Yeah, I don't feel bad because he chose it, but I get what you're saying. I did hear one comment about perhaps the Clippers didn't come to play because it was Kawhi's load management night, and they were just like, nope, we're not having any of it. But I thought about it, and Kawhi actually did have 8 stitches and just was elbowed in the mouth, and so that might have been part of the reason he sat out and was actually recovering. But yeah, I do wonder about the. Well, I don't know, like this generally the team's tolerance for a game sat out by Kawhi, or if they were trying to like make some sort of statement, which seems like a really terrible way to go about it. But anyway,
Yeah, they just look bad.
Yeah. All right. Other statements from around the league. Not really a statement, but the Rockets game against the Oklahoma City Thunder was canceled on day 2 due to COVID. And by due to COVID, I mean due to James Harden.
Yeah. I mean, last season, that's all I ever talked about was, I know that I said Rudy Gobert gave COVID to the NBA, but really it is James Harden that is giving COVID to the NBA. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know if you guys have read like some of the, like, there's been a lot of chatter about like, here's a guy, he just like plays a game, scores 44 points, and I forget how many assists he had, but it was like a record. And then he kind of, dicks off and like goes to a strip club. And then he says that he was there to support one of his homegirls and that it was like a charity thing. I think that's what he was claiming. And then he just comes back like there's no tomorrow. Like he is doing everything he can possibly do to like get off the Houston roster. Like he's even his shape.
But at the same time is making himself such a liability for any team that takes him on.
Well, and that's the thing is like he's being a baby. He's so incredibly good at playing ball, but again, he's another one of those people, and maybe made from like the similar cloth that Paul George is made out of, where he also doesn't have any sense of like of himself. Like he just sees himself as this monster basketball player and that's it, but there's not a lot of integrity. And I think Vince Carter also like spoke about this and said the same thing that you're saying, Sarah, is that he's a huge liability and he should really figure that out. In the way he's disrespecting what's happening on the planet, and thinks he's bigger than Corona. Like it's gross. He's gross. James Harden is gross.
Allison, any thoughts?
I just wonder who would sign up for that. Like, are any teams like actively looking at him? Like, you kind of wonder if, I mean, the Knicks are kind of an outlier in that, they took a gamble on Carmelo Anthony, and I'm not suggesting Carmelo Anthony's behavior is anything like that, but he was like a proven star that, kind of had trouble fitting in and didn't really show up in the defensive end a lot, and they gave him a huge contract. I just wonder if James Dolan would want to, take a risk on James Harden. I don't know. I've heard Raptors fans pitch this. I don't like the idea. It's a terrible idea. He behaves like a spoiled child, and I just don't think there's any room for that in our culture. And I mean, certainly he is a top 5 player in the league. He's impactful. But I mean, I just remember him watching him in the conference final. I think it was the year 2017-18. And he choked. Like, he did not show up. And for all the years that I heard Kyle Lowry choke slander, I don't ever want to hear that again. And James Harden choked. So he's, no doubt he's like magnetic to watch. All these step back jumpers, and he crosses over people and they're on the floor and he stares at them and shoots up a 3. I don't know. That's kind of arrogant. And I don't think that's the way the game is meant to be played, that sort of arrogance. But, I'm curious, like who would take a chance on him? I don't know.
I'm sure we'll find out, in the sense that either we'll see a team sign him, trade for him, or we won't. So the answer you will have an answer, Allison, by the middle of the season, I think.
I think he's
so
just
too.
trying to self-destruct. Like he's just trying to force his way out of Houston, clearly. And yeah, I wonder what'll happen. I guess we'll
Mhm.
see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
More
Well,
dumpster fires coming your way.
well, and speaking of dumpster fires and speaking of the Knicks, y'all hear about the jersey fiasco?
I did.
Okay, Allison, why don't you tell our listeners what happened in New York?
So Reggie Bullock from the Knicks appeared on the court with a jersey that had different numbers on the front and the back. And one of the numbers was 23, which was shared by one of his teammates. So this apparently led to some on court confusion with the officials and probably the opposing team. So this sort of encapsulates the incompetence that is the Knicks. It's just kind of like a microcosm of everything wrong with them. So that was, I found kind of funny. I've never heard of that before in all my years of watching ball.
Well, and if there was a team that it was going to happen to, it would be the Knicks.
Yes.
Oh, it's too bad Jade's not on the podcast tonight because we know how much she loves the Knicks.
Well, Jade, you can consider this your shout out. All right, so let's move into our last segment for this particular podcast. We're going to look around the league, and the question is a broad question. Basically, I'd like you to pick a team other than the Raptors that has either impressed you so far, or you think that their off-season personnel roster changes are particularly good, or just a team that you're really looking forward to watching around the league generally. Go ahead, Allison. Which team do you want to highlight?
I hate to say this, but kind of the Atlanta Hawks, they made some nice acquisitions in the offseason. And they really did need a complement of some veterans along with youth. I mean, Trae Young is, a very talented player. I think I could argue that he has the best handles in the NBA. I've seen him do things with the ball that I couldn't even discern when they when in slow motion. Like it was amazing. I think they added Danilo Gallinari. He's a very nice piece. I mean, he's a bit of a defensive liability, but he can certainly stretch the floor. And then the Bogdan Bogdanovic trade or acquisition free agency that sort of misfired in Milwaukee. And they got Clint Capella last year in a trade from Houston, but he's a very agile rim protecting center. And the other player they added was I'm drawing a blank right now. Oh, Rajon Rondo. So, and when he played like last year with the Lakers, I was kind of skeptical because he doesn't really have an outside shot, and he's certainly a veteran, a lot of miles on him, but it kind of speaks to LeBron's leadership that he was able to bring out the best in all those players. And Rajon Rondo certainly has gas in the tank and something to give. So I think that's going to be interesting. And when you look, they have John Collins too, which interestingly they didn't extend him. He was up for like the rookie scale extension, and they didn't extend him. So I wonder if he's part of their plans. But yeah, I think Atlanta's going to be interesting to watch. And I also like the moves that Miami made, even though they're in our conference.
Yeah. Well, to your point about the Hawks, they are, as of, I guess, a minute ago, up. They started their season 3-0, so they're undefeated so far, which is a far cry from how it went last year. So I think you might be onto something, that this is a different team. All right, Sonali, what do you think? Just or generally, what's your team you want to highlight?
So I mean, like, it's very obvious, but like I think I shared my sentiments early. Like, I really think this is going to be Brooklyn and the Lakers going to the finals this year. The Nets, I'm really excited about them because obviously KD's back, and watching him and Kyrie play together. And then also like watching Steve Nash as a coach, as a head coach. It's going to be really interesting to see how he coaches these two monsters. And then, yeah, Jimmy buckets and Miami. It's similar thoughts to what Allison had to say. Like they've made some really they've made some good decisions, and it'll be very interesting to see how they develop and to see more of Jimmy on the floor. And then, I don't like the Lakers, but I have to say, like, I'm really curious to see how this new team performs, and especially with the addition of like Dennis Schroeder. I think that's what his name is. He's been really impressive in the, especially in that opening game. So, yeah, the heavy hitters are what I am highlighting. The Nets and the Lakers.
People are gonna think that we collaborated on this, Sonali, because I'm with you on, at least on the Nets. They're the team that I'm actually very curious about. And not just because of Kyrie and KD, although I am curious to see how that chemistry works out. And so far it seems to be working out quite well. And Kevin Durant is back in top form. And I actually think they're going to be such a fun team to watch. But like also, Karis LeVert is coming off the bench. On any other team, that guy is a starter. This is a very, very deep team. And I loved watching Brooklyn against the Raptors in the first round last year.
Yeah.
Because you could just see so much self-belief in that team. They're young, they believe in themselves. Now they've got two superstars leading the way coming back from injury. And I actually think they're going to be a really fun team to watch. I might even be a little bit cheering for them. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's
but
great.
They have to change the court color.
Oh yeah, that ridiculous court. But yeah, really great point about Karis LeVert. I totally forgot that. Yeah, it's gonna be exciting to watch them.
Yeah, I don't know. I am looking forward to it a lot. I'm actually also curious about how the 76ers are going to fare under Doc Rivers. And I know they didn't make hugely significant changes, but Danny Green's on their team now. Seth Curry's moved over. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see what the 76ers can do this season. Last year I knew they were going nowhere. This year I feel like there's been a subtle change, and I'm curious where that subtle change will lead.
Also, can we just like take a moment to like understand Steph Curry's new hairstyle? Like, I don't really understand his hair right now.
You think it will only take a moment?
I hope so, because I
feel like it might take longer than a moment. But
I can't.
You like it, Allison?
And how badly are the Golden State Warriors gonna suck this year?
Oh, that Christmas Day game, that was bad. I gotta say, they didn't really deserve a Christmas Day game, but yeah.
The fall from the dynasty.
It's always sad to watch.
That's too bad about Klay Thompson. And when you guys were talking about Brooklyn, apparently Spencer Dinwiddie now has a partially torn ACL, so it looks like he's going to have an extended absence. So that's unfortunate as well.
And what happened to? I think you were saying that was it Ja Morant that was taken out on a wheelchair earlier?
Yeah, sprained left ankle. So that's unfortunate as well. He's a bright light.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites.
Yeah. All right, so let's move to our final piece before we wrap it up with predictions for the upcoming week for the Raptors. We've got 3 games. 76ers, followed by the Knicks, followed by a rematch against the Pelicans. What do you think the record will be? Sonali, go ahead.
I think we'll beat the 76ers. And sorry, who was the next team? We're going to lose against the Pelicans again, I think.
Oh, okay, the Knicks.
The Knicks. Oh, we're going to crush the Knicks. So the Knicks and the 76ers are going to be 2 wins for us, and the Pelicans we're going to lose.
2-1. Okay. Allison, what do you think?
So I'm going to say 2-1 too. We're not beating Philly, but we're going to beat New Orleans again. Like, not again, but you know what I mean. We're going to beat them and the Knicks.
Ooh, I like it.
All right. I mean, if we lose against Philly, we'd go down 0-3. I feel like that could potentially impact. No, I'm going to go with Sonali. I don't think we're going to lose against the 76ers. because I don't think Kyle Lowry will let us. And I'm going to go with a 3-0 record.
Of course you are.
I like this.
Of course you are.
Sarah's back. Her optimism is back.
Allison.
And Norman Powell's going to get a triple-double.
No, Sarah, I quite appreciate that because I'm such a like hardened and pragmatic no, I'm not a pessimist. I'm just deeply pragmatic. So I do love that about you, that you're optimistic.
Listen, like, I'm not necessarily going to say 3-0 every week, but I do think the Knicks are a shoe-in. I do think that Kyle Lowry is going to will the team to victory. If he can, he will. Let me put it that way. Or if he will, he can. I don't know how that works. So then that's a win. And then if they win too, why wouldn't they beat the New Orleans? I don't know. I feel like it could happen.
Well, I hope you're right.
I know you always hope I'm right.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's true.
It's so good to be back.
Yeah. Welcome back, Raptor Queens. Welcome back, Raptors basketball, and all of our fans. Thank you for tuning in to our first episode of the new season. And yeah, wonderful to have all of you here. Stay Raptors fans. We'll see you next week.
Stay Raptors fans.
Bye.
We the North.
Woohoo.